This is BBC News with the latest business headlines for viewers in the UK and around the world. The Bank of Japan tweaks its long-standing monetary easing programme, sending shares lower but strengthening the yen against the dollar. With the zero-COVID policy abandoned and infection cases rising, could China's economic growth be knocked off track if there is a return to lockdowns? And party time, hardly if you work in the nighttime industry. It's seen a 50% downturn in business at this, the most festive of seasons. We explain why. Welcome. Well, there's been some dramatic movements on the Tokyo Stock Exchange this morning. The Nikkei lost as much as 3% after Japan's central bank tweaked its long-standing monetary easing program in a surprise move that also saw the yen strengthen quickly against the dollar. After a two-day policy meeting, the bank said it would widen the band in which it would allow rates for 10-year Japan government bonds to move, saying it would improve market functioning. Well, let's have a look at the Nikkei and see what it's doing right now. And it is down 2.52%. But as widely expected, the BOJ kept its 0.1% target for short-term interest rates and 0% for the 10-year government bond yield unchanged. So why, when most of the world's big economies are on a rate-rising path, does Japan stand out like this? Well, joining me now is Sujiro Takeshita, Dean Professor at School of Management and Information, University of Shizuoka. Welcome to you. Thanks very much for being with us. So just explain the Bank of Japan's moves today.
Well, as you reported, it was a bit of a surprise. We knew that eventually they would have to do this and possibly reverting back the race to normalization eventually. But the maneuverability, the capability of Bank of Japan is very much limited because, well, they also just announced that JGB holding, Japan government bond holding by Bank of Japan, has reached over 50%. And 10 years ago, only 10%, and their current account has reached almost 600 trillion yen, meaning that if they raise the rates, they'll be shooting their own foot. There'll be possibility of people talking about, Bank of Japan becoming insolvent because their net worth is only 10 trillion yen. So, there's a lot of, negativity that would would come out of the basket should they raise the rates at this moment, particularly considering the fact that, Japanese economy really isn't back on its feet yet.
So the reaction has been a strengthening of the yen, but a weakening of the Nikkei. Just explain that to us.
Well, obviously, many people had expected this ultra-low interest rate, to continue. So that's how the market perceived, the sentiment to be. But obviously, you can see the long-term rates shooting up to 0.46 at one point today, obviously meaning a very negative connotation to the, equity market as a whole. But, in my opinion, this was something that is basically one of the normalization process. Although the maneuverability of Bank of Japan is limited, I think this is one healthy move that, Bank of Japan has made.
The population of Japan is aging. As we know, consumer demand isn't going to boost growth inside Japan, is it? So what can the Bank of Japan do to boost economic growth?
Well, there's very much limited actions that Bank of Japan can do. I think it's much more in the private sector, which has been withholding the wages, which has been withholding further innovative moves, basically to get out of this doldrum and basically try to utilize their cash position in a much more meaningful way. I think it's about time that we start looking at innovative moves by ourselves rather than just relying on the government, particularly with a limited possibility of moves that Bank of Japan can make.
Okay, Sujiro Takeshita, thank you very much for your analysis.